Alright all, like the title suggests. In today's video we're going to be installing and we're going to be doing the temperature testing of the Aigo AT240. This is a 240mm all-in-one liquid cooler for your CPU. We will be installing it on the AM4 platform, and we will be doing the temperature test for it to see if it's actually worth the money. And the parts I've decided to use with this today, I am running the Ryzen 5 3600. We are running the Gigabyte B550 MDS3H motherboard, and it is in the Cooler Master Half Evo case with the side panels on it, so it's more indicative of what you can expect in an enclosed case. As far as the testing behind it, we did run Cinebench R23 for an hour, and we also monitored the temperature with Hardware Info 64 while we were doing the testing. But let me flip you over here and we'll show you how to get this thing installed. All right, we got the system set up here to about where I think you should be when you go to install this. We got the CPU in there, we got the RAM put in, we got the NVMe drive in there. We don't have it in the case. If you're doing this in a new build, I would recommend installing your water block on top of the CPU outside of the case. It's just a lot easier. Even though a lot of cases nowadays have them big cutouts in the back where you can get into that back plate to hold them still when you do this, it's still a lot easier just to do it outside of the case. So that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to put the water block on it, and then we're going to mount the motherboard in, and then I'll show you how to mount the radiator as well. First thing we need to do, I messed up with the thermal paste that they sent us, so I'm going to be putting my own on it. I have some MX5 here that I'm going to be putting on the CPU. Like I said, they do add enough thermal paste for application, but foolish me, I messed it up, so I'm going to have to add my own here. So let me get this done up, and then we will get into installing the water block. All right guys, I got the thermal paste applied. Inside the baggage that come with the all-in-one water cooler here, you will have to pull out some of the accessories. You will need to pull out these plates that look like these. These are for AM3, AM4, and any of the sockets of AMD that this thing will fit on. So you will need these. These will be connecting to the water block that goes on top of the CPU. Also, they are labeled in a bag for AMD. These are the screws that will be attaching the water block down through them brackets and going down into the back plate that's on the AM4 platform. AMD always has that back plate, and these utilizes that back plate that AMD gives you. All right, and these are for AMD or Intel, depending on how you want to mount your radiator and fans into your case. Me personally, I just pulled out these long shanked ones, because whenever I do the radiator and fans, I'm going to be going through the case, through the fans, and into the radiator. Now, if you want to put your fans on the inside of the radiator, you'll have to use the short ones. Just go through the case into the radiator, and then you'll use these long ones to go through the fans and back into the back of the radiator. Depends on the way you want to hook your fans up to your radiator and how you want to set it up. And that's going to be pretty well the hardware that you're going to need out of the kit that comes with it. Okay, and to get started with them, you'll have to take these AM4 brackets here, and you will have to connect them to your head block. Okay, now keep in mind, on this head block, you do have in the very middle, your tubes have to be on the right side if you're looking at it, because the Aigo lights up here in white, I believe. And for it to be upright on your motherboard, these pipes need to be on the right hand side, which is closest to the RAM. So you need to keep that in mind when mounting this. And to put these on, they just kind of take it and slide down over top of it here. You do want the ones with the extra little screw holes up towards the top of the motherboard when you put these on. Just take them, slide them down on here like so. Make sure you get them all the way down on there. And then the ones that's a little bit shorter, you also need to get them and put them down here on the bottom of the pump, just like so, and then slide it on. All right, and there we got the brackets on before we can mount them up to the motherboard. Next thing you need to do with the motherboard, since we've already got our thermal compound on there now, and we got the brackets on the water block, we need to take off these plastic brackets that AMD includes that will fit a lot of different coolers, but this cooler does not use these plastic brackets. So let me get these pulled off of here for you. All right, now with them black plastic brackets off, you still have to hold that back plate on. And of course, I recommend you doing this while it's laying down. All right, guys, now since we got the motherboard ready, let me get reset up here and I'll show you how to get this water block put on this motherboard. All right, guys, here we go. Got you set up here where we can actually make it a little bit easier for me to do and hopefully get you guys a clear picture on what I'm doing here. I want to take the water block here, which that's all it is on this one, is the water block, because the pump's actually up in the hoses. And we're going to take her and set her down here, get her lined up. And yes, it looks like it's up off the CPU quite a bit, but it really ain't. It's actually sitting on top of the CPU. And you put your screw down through the hole here. Just like so, get it started. Okay, just a couple threads. You don't want it real tight because you still want to be able to move it if necessary. Then this one over here, we're going to do the same thing with it. Just a couple threads, just enough to get it going. You know, you don't want to tighten them down real good because you don't know if you're going to have to move it. Just like everything else that I do, you know, just a couple threads. All right, then we're going to do the third one up here. Make sure we get it lined up here. All right, there we go, that one's started. And then we're going to take this one and get this one here started. Alright, now since they're all started, we're just going to go back and forth and do a couple twists on each one until we get them snug down. These things are spring loaded, so you don't have to worry about over tightening them. You just need to get them down there, you know, and they will bottom out where they need to be because them springs on them. So, you know, you just tighten them down. Like I said, you just want to do a couple twists on each one. Make sure they're all nice and snug. You ain't sealing against water or air or nothing, so it don't have to be extremely tight. Just snug. And I think that'll probably be about enough for that. Alright guys, and that's the way you put the water block on. Let me get set up here and I'll show you how to put this thing in the case now. Alright, I went ahead and off camera, I went ahead and mounted the motherboard into my case here. Like I said, this is the Cooler Master half Evo case I'm using. This is my open test bench. The way I kind of got it set up here on the desk or on the table here, you know, it's kind of like what you would see in your system. There's a few differences, you know, like this would be the top of your case. This would be the front of your case. So it's pretty indicative of what you would be looking at or close to it, depending on the case that you have. That's why I kind of like using this case, and it's also my test bench as well. But anyways, a couple of things to keep in mind when installing your radiator for this. Number one is your fan orientation. Okay, for your fan orientation, if you're putting your fans on the front of your case, you definitely want them to be an intake. If they're going in back behind the radiator, or if they're going in front of the radiator, either one, you definitely want these as an intake. And if you don't know, they use them as an intake. You see how these got the bracket on the back that holds the fan hub in? Your air will always come in from the other side. They'll come in from this side that don't have the bracket. And it comes out this side. But if you're going to be putting them on the front of your case, you definitely want these brackets that holds the fan hub in place to be on the inside or towards the motherboard. Like I said, that it goes either way. If it's inside on the back side of the radiator or in front of the radiator, either way you want them brackets towards the inside of the case because it's an intake. Now if you're going to do a top mounted radiator, when you do the fans, you want them brackets to face upward. If it's on top, if it's underneath the radiator, or if it's on top of the radiator, it really don't matter. You still need them brackets facing upwards. That way it's an exhaust instead of an intake. So that pretty well covers the fan orientation. Another thing you need to keep in mind when doing this one here is like the Pure Loop 240 that I've also got on the channel. It's got the pump inside your hoses. There's a lot of videos out there showing that you need you need to keep some port of your loop higher than what the pump is. That way you don't collect air bubbles in here. So if I would mount mine in the front like this on this particular case, and this was an upright case, that ain't quite the highest port of it, so it'd be all right. But if you pull these lines down, it becomes the highest port. So whenever you figure out how you want to put your radiator, you need to keep that in mind that this is your pump, and you need something in your system, in your all-in-one, that's higher than that. If you're going to put it in the front of the case, I would probably switch these hoses around like this and put it down here. That way this is going to be higher than what your pump is. That way you can keep your pump from getting air bubbles in it. You will have to do something with your hoses to get around the edge of your GPU down here, but at least you know your pump is going to be in a low position. If you're going with a top mounted radiator, something like this, it really don't matter because your radiator is going to always be higher than your pump. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to how you're going to put the radiator in, and make sure your pump ain't at the highest port of the loop. For me, since this is sitting on its side, and this case will end up laying down like this when it's said and done, I put the radiator in like this. It's still going to be all right because the radiator is still going to be higher than what the pump is. So that's the way I'm going to mount mine. Like I said earlier, I'm just going to take these longer screws and I'm going to go through the case, through the fans, and into the radiator. All right, guys. Now, since we got the radiator and fans installed, now we can cover some of the cabling. You do have quite a few cables with this. Like this one right here coming off the pump. This is your pump header. We will have to connect that to the CPU header on the motherboard. It is notched. It is a 3-pin. We'll be connecting to a 4-pin header, which this will vary depending on your motherboard, but they're usually right up in this area, up right around your CPU socket. I'm hoping you can see that. That's gray on this motherboard. Just line up them notches, and you push them down on. Okay, that way your pump will be operating. You know, it's pretty important for that pump to be operating. So that gives you power to your pump. Okay. Now your front fans here, they got 2 sets of wires coming off of them. These two, one for each fan off your front, off your radiator, which is your 4-pin PMW headers for your fans. You also have this one back here, which this one didn't come with the kit, but this is the fan that's on the back fan of the case. So we'll have to hook them 3 fan headers up. Okay, then you have the one coming off your pump block, or your water block that hooks up your CPU there. That is your ARGB header. And each of your front fans also have ARGB headers. which is kind of nice that they do this. But the ARGB headers on this, they do have it to where they can be daisy chained. So that's what we're going to do. Since these are the only ARGB headers I got in the system, we will be daisy chaining these together. I don't know if you can actually see this or not, but the ARGB header is right here on this motherboard, right underneath the hoses. So we're going to take these front two here, and we will daisy chain these two together. Match up the pin layout on them, and push them together. There we go. Alright, then you have your ARGB header off of your water block there. It needs to be plugged in. We'll go ahead and pull that cap off, and we'll plug that one into this one. Just for safekeeping, we'll put this block back on this one. Okay, and then this one right here, we will be hooking into the ARGB header on the motherboard. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you can see that real good on video or not because of the framework and the tubing and everything that's in the way. Just line up your pins. There's no notches or nothing on these. They're almost as bad as, they're worse than a USB 3.0 header. But you just kind of line up the 3 pins. Because it is only a 5-volt system, it is ARGB. You just line up the 3 pins and push them down on there. I think that's on there. And of course you got a lot of excess cables here and whatnot you need to take care of. They do give you inside of the case or inside of the system, the all-in-one, they do give you a splitter for your ARGB headers, and they do give you a 2-way fan splitter. But as I showed you, I do have 3 fans myself that need hooked up, and I don't recommend hooking up any more than 3 fans to any one header. But that's all right, because that's all I got is 3 fans. Instead of hooking up to two different fan headers, I'm going to use a 3-way splitter here and hook up all 3 of these fans onto the same header here. And these just hook up into these headers same way as they would on a motherboard. And they got the notches in them and whatnot, and you just kind of shove them together. So I'm going to take it and bring it back here to this 4-pin header back here, and I'm going to match up the notches and slash down on them. Alright guys, let me hook up the rest of the main cables, put the GPU back in the system and whatnot, and I'll get you some glamour shots of what this thing looks like. Alright, that's the way you install this thing on the AM4 platform. But as far as the temperatures go, I did run the 3600 at stock. I went into the Gigabyte B550M DS3H motherboard's BIOS and set everything back to default settings. That way everything was running default. The temperature to me was looking pretty good. At idle, I was looking at about 32, 33 degrees. At the max, after running Cinebench R23 for an hour straight, I was looking at about 72, 73 degrees max, and the average was right around 71 degrees, which I think them's pretty common, pretty fair for a 240 AIO. I think they did pretty good. They got ARGB lighting on it, which everybody has to have ARGB anymore. It does have the design that I like that has the pump up in the hoses instead of down around the water block head, which I do like that idea. So for the price that this thing comes in at, which the day of the filming is about $70 on Amazon or Newegg here in the US, I don't think you can go too wrong with it. If you like this kind of content, go down and give me a thumbs up. If not, give me a thumbs down. There's our comment section below. I go through them every weekend here on Saturday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the US. If you really like this kind of content, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on. That way you're notified next time I put out a video. I go live here on YouTube. And also, if you're interested, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. The links is in the description below. I don't care your inbox, but I do put up photos and new stuff coming in, give you an idea what's coming up on the channel. If there's any information about my live stream, I got to cancel it or change the time. It's where you also get that information. With all that being said, you all have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.